We're live.
We're live.
We're live.
We start everyone by saying we're live.
We're live.
Today is January 11th, 2013. This is the beginning of our asset-based resource development planning. We started this past Monday, the 7th, and had technical difficulties. And so we're going to be, we know that we haven't had a chance to invite anybody because we just said, let's re-record a little bit of what we did on Monday to bring people up to speed, because there were some people that were watching and then everything sort of got garbled. So we're going to start right now and go a little bit ways so that we can, we have to start doing our planning internally, and in that way you and I keep moving forward in this process.
And this is our sort of practice in doing this open. As
well, and with the technology of how we make it all work, because the last time we tried to do this, it didn't work.
So that's the practice part. Is getting it right.
Yeah. Well, I think the practice part is to stop saying we're in beta and to really realize that we are absolutely not only that we're in alpha, but that so is Google.
Yes, we're all in alpha.
We're all.
That's
we're
okay.
All in alpha. We are. I'm Hilda Gottlieb.
And I'm Dimitri Petropoulos.
We are the co-founders of Creating the Future, and what we're going to be looking at today is our asset-based resource development plan, which is a way of looking at developing resources that can further the mission. That is a little bit different than what most resource development planning looks at and how it happens. Let me take you through the steps of asset-based resource development, just to let people who are watching come up to speed a little bit. And then what we're going to be doing is really planning. This is not an educational broadcast. This is the two of us really doing our planning for Creating the Future. And what I'm going to ask, even though there's nobody watching right now live, but what we ask everybody in the future is that the two of us have been working together for over 20 years. And as a result of that, we speak in shorthand. We have our own internal jargon. And so if, as you are watching this at some point, you have questions about the way we phrase things or something's not clear, please put a note in the comments or shoot us a note, and we will try and clarify the stuff that for us is just, we say one word and we know what we mean.
Right. It's sort of the who's on first phenomenon.
Yeah. All right. Let me start then by talking about what is asset-based resource development. Okay, so I'm in the camera now.
You are in the camera.
Okay. Most of the time when we do resource development, what we do is sort of in its roughest form, we figure out what our budget is. We figure out what's coming in, we figure out what the gap is, and we try to fill the gap. And that is the roughest form of resource development. What we look at instead, first of all, that is fund development, that's money development. And what we're really looking at is how do we ensure we have the resources to further the mission. So we understand that resources are not just money. So that's number one. What we look at then is different steps. And if you have, I don't know if you can, if this is clear here, but I'll let people know that in the Pollyanna Principles, pages 253 to 272 actually have case studies that you can look at. So if you're watching this and you're interested. The first, we do determine what our budget is. And we do determine from the financial side what is coming in, what we already have. But the next step in that is identifying what we have to build on, and building the resources that we need upon what we already have. So it's a strength-based approach, an asset-based approach, not looking at what do we need, but looking at what do we have and what can we build on. And what we frequently find, and actually have never not found, is that we have way more to build on than we actually would have hours in the day to build on that and have everything that we need. So the first thing we do is identify our assets. There are physical assets, which is the stuff you have. As a virtual organization, we don't have a lot of stuff, right. But there are housing organizations that have tons of stuff. They've got parking lots, they've got rooftops, they've got. Then there's people assets, which is what we're going to focus on today. There's mission assets, which is what you do. We are not going to focus on that today quite yet, but it is how you develop, how you look at the asset of the mission pieces that you're already doing. We'll talk about that the next time because that's really what we need to focus on. But I want to talk about people today because I think we can do that relatively quickly. And then community assets are the physical, the people, and the mission assets of everybody else in your community. So there's assets everywhere. You know, those who are familiar with the diaper bank model, the building on shared resources model, you identify what's already in the community. And today we're just going to focus on people. The next question we ask after we identify those assets is how can those assets be activated to support our work, to support the mission? How do we activate those assets and resources? From there, we choose the best options, and then we matrix against objective criteria to determine which are the best options and which of those best are the best. But for today, I think all we're going to really get to is identifying our assets in the people area and how can those assets be activated. So that's it for instructions. The rest of it is just you and me planning. Over here, just for folks who are interested and for our internal reminder, is our budget. Our goal for this particular piece, we've got 4 goals this year, but this is the one that we're really focusing on for this.
Right.
Is really to stabilize and enhance our current programs, and we need the cash flow with which to do that. We needed the people flow with which to do that. We need the resources with which to do that. Break down really fast. Current operations is about $3,000 más o menos a month as a virtual organization. It's rent, it's the conference room, it's travel is for conferences that we are already slated to present at and that we need to be at to be able to start spreading the mission and engaging people. Salaries of $15,000 a month is right now the goal for you and me. And for anybody watching who does not know this, this is funny because we haven't had a salary in 2 years. So, and that's why we're talking about stabilizing current programs, because if you and I don't start getting paid, then none of this is all a moot point. That right there, just for what we have right now, is $20,000 a month. And then we really need to add new staff. We need to be looking at, you know, we keep talking internally about this person not being a CEO, but a CMO, a Chief Mission Officer. That's not you nor my brilliance is running this thing. Right. You know, you and me need to be the ones pushing on the outside, as Gail calls it, the chief boundary pushers. And then an admin person. Increased operations that would be due to that. We sort of pulled a number out of what that would, we haven't, you know, we'll have to figure that out as we go. But really what we're looking at is anywhere between $20,000 and $37,000 a month as the total of what we need to raise based on our assets and rooted in our assets. Okay, so what we did last time, and I'll just use this because we spent so much time on it and it was great. And just because the technology didn't work doesn't mean it's not great. What we talked about last time is activating the first ripple. And we talk about that internally a lot as if you throw a stone into the pond, there's the first ripple, the second ripple. It's the first level of people who are already deeply engaged in the work that we're doing. And so, you know, getting them engaged with each other, getting them more engaged, that whole participation of people that are already, so it's not even how will they activate others, it's right now how do we activate, because the question becomes how do you activate your existing resources to further the mission. And so the people that we talked about were clearly our board, our graduates community, and the communities that we already have. And so we have a rich graduates community, is about 50, 60 people. We have the lab teams that have been part of our R&D efforts so far. We have our amazing volunteer board recording secretaries, Jessica and Drew, and Jessica's separate here because Drew is a graduate. But we also talked about the fact that we have participants in our programs. Again, that very, very first, who's already integrally, tightly related to us. Program participants is the NPCon's Twitter chat participants. the NPCon's Facebook group participants. One of our other programs is the Making Change podcast, and so I think that there's
definitely a group that needs to be
interview guests. We have done a really crappy job of continuing to keep them engaged. Some we've kept engaged, but for the most part, we've done not a great job of continuing to engage them.
We just have to have live broadcasts the day after their podcast goes live, so that they will want to participate, as we had today.
Yeah, but if you don't, that's great, the day after, and then what happens the day? I mean, seriously, the glibness aside, we're not doing a really good job.
No, I agree. I agree. And
we are continuing to engage folks during the month when they are the subject of the interview.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about them, we talk with them, how do we share things and stuff, but we're not being very good about continuing to engage.
Yeah, and that's a powerful message.
And yeah, it really is. And then, so we looked at the board, we looked at people who are in our communities, we looked at people who are participating in our programs, and people who have actively said they want to connect. So people who filled out a form on the website who have said, I want to be in one of your immersion classes. That's pretty active. Individuals who connect saying that they want to be engaged. So in whatever way. So for instance, we just did 2 sessions in the past 2 days with Dave Spett and with Zach Breaker, both of whom have said all along, I really want to be engaged in the work that you're doing. So there's people who contact us. We saw that the other day last week with the meeting that we had that Rachel Fagan wound up being part of, because Rachel had contacted us directly and said, so there's those folks. And we also mentioned the people who are guests at our board meetings. So when we have participating guests, they're in that first ripple. Mm-hmm. Is there anybody else that we missed that we're already engaged with, that already sort of know, kind of at least what we're doing, or at least are in daily touch with us?
When we went over this the other day, I think we were pretty thorough in terms
but we forgot these guys. So,
right.
Yeah, so I'm trying to, I want to make sure.
It is a.
All right. Well, let's work with these guys. So if this is the list, I'm just going to pull this out of the way. We don't have to keep it in the line of sight of the camera, but I want to make sure that it's close enough that we can remember. The question then becomes, how can we activate the gifts and assets and strengths of the people in that first ripple to help further our mission? And one of the things that occurred to me, and this is what I was scribbling with one hand and a Sharpie at lunch, with the other hand on the taco, that those assets and strengths are a combination of who people are and what they have. So just to clarify in terms of the question, I mean, we're always looking for the better question. How can we activate who people are and what they have in the people in our first ripple to help further the mission? And the mission is a 4-pronged mission of research and development, demonstration, education, and convening. So if we're activating a resource to help assist the mission, that's what we want help assisting. Mm-hmm. And this is what the gifts that people have, is who they are and what they have. So the very, very top of mind thought is that I don't know where my red marker is. I don't have my red marker. That's all right. We're going to live without the red marker, Hildy. It's right here on the Hoochie Butcher. Okay, thank you. The first thing that pops into my mind is that among board and grads is that many of them are already providing ongoing support and participation in a number of ways. Mm-hmm. So there are many of our board and grad members are doing a monthly financial support some in large dollars, some in small dollars, that are making right now a huge difference. Of a nut that is $3,000 a month just in operating. Right now, about $1,800 a month is coming in monthly support in big and little donations. And one of the things that's really big about that, and about the fact that others are doing, they're participating in ways that are furthering the mission. I'm thinking about the fact that, so my brain's going in a million directions.
Obviously.
Community members and board members, etc. Sort of, they're giving their gifts in ways that feel natural to them. And I think this is a huge area for us to tap into. And I'm thinking specifically, the past 2 meetings that we have had, 3 meetings that we have had, Kim has done graphic note-taking.
Which is fabulous.
Yeah, and which we didn't even know she knew how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Then suddenly she's sending us, here's the notes I took from the meeting. That's hugely powerful. And when we add those back into the videos that we're doing, she could even do this one. We could watch the video and do this one.
This would be great.
And talk about a circle inside a circle. But these are gifts that people in our immediate circle, we're not asking them that powerful question that Gail asked the other day at our volunteer meeting, which is, what are the strengths and gifts that you have that nobody's been asking you for? And I think that's just a, right.
Yeah, and that's beyond what they think they have. And I think that's a good distinction, or an important distinction.
Well, it's beyond what anybody ever asks. People ask for money.
Right.
And it's not that we don't need money. We need everything. But again, I think we're talking about that sort of sense of full participation. You know, what gifts have we not been asked to share? Because in support of the mission, those are huge.
Right.
Those are absolutely powerfully huge. The thing that's the thought that's sort of running through my mind in all of this is that these are people who are already engaged and participating, who want to sustain the work because it's benefiting them. They're getting so much out of it that they want to make sure it's still there.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, we can be very, very, very much better about asking people for. We've never asked, you know, most of the folks that are in that inner ripple. You know, we've asked some folks to help with monthly support when they've been doing other things. I mean, there's been that caveat that we never want to just ask people for money, and that comes out of the R&D
right.
from philanthropy, that we want to ask people for all of their gifts. But for the most part, the lion's share of that $1,800 we've never asked for. Mm-hmm. The huge lion's share, easily, you know, 1,600 of the 1,800 we've never asked for.
Right.
And much of that is coming down to $5 a month, $10 a month, that people don't realize. Yeah, I'm always surprised at the number of people who are saying, you know, I only give $10. It's not anything, and you know, if that's $120 a year. They, you know, if somebody asked for a donation of $120, they would think that that was pretty.
And you know, and there's a significant number that are giving $100, and they're giving, you know, and more.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
So
No, I'm just looking at the range, and I'm looking at the fact
Right,
that you know, people are supporting again because it's benefiting them, and they're and they want to see it keep going and growing and benefiting them more. All right.
I do think that benefit is, you know, benefiting them runs a real big gamut of what that means.
Okay.
That I think that there's folks who are applying it in their work today,
Right.
and tomorrow, and I think that there's folks that are seeing this as an investment. You know, that this is benefiting me in the future. You know, the direct benefit today may not seem as apparent as to the person who is using approaches in a facilitation they're doing tomorrow. So I think it's important to think of that. And not only is this an investment, but it's also and I'm trying to find a better way of saying this, not a hedging your bet, but an alternative approach to things. That you know, it's sort of like in a business competitive sense. I always want to see other.
Change the camera so it's on you, so that people can see that you're actually talking.
Well, they could see me. I mean, it's small. If I was to put a business, a for-profit cloak on top of it, is I always want there to be a competitor. I mean, I want there to be other ideas in the pool of things that are going on to keep refreshing what's happening, to keep it from stagnating. So
well, I think that's part of the investment.
yes, and well, I was just fleshing that out. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
You know, I was fleshing out what I meant by that is that it's not only investment for the future, but part of what that means is there's new ideas and new approaches and new things that are.
Well, I think that there's that and I'm seeing the investment in the future part as a different. The future of the world is really
yes. No, I agree with that, but I'm looking, like I said, there's a whole gamut of reasons why people would be looking at this from an investment standpoint. So
the people who are already being deeply affected.
Right.
Well, I think that the biggest reason that it comes from a combination of those two, which is that when we talk about the fact that it's benefiting them directly, the benefit is direct to them in that they feel hope, they feel possibility. So there's an emotional piece as well.
Right,
they're supported in a community that is giving them concrete day-to-day examples of the fact that what they believe is possible is actually physically really possible and happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's sort of the it's not a two thing, it's a one thing, it's pieces of a one thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Okay, how can we activate the gifts and assets of the people in that first ripple to further our mission? Okay, well, one other thing that we've been doing is developing classes for them. So there's we've been doing webinars for our grads, very specifically for our grads. We are now talking about doing webinars. We're not talking about, we're about to start doing webinars for other people, especially people that are, I mean, I'm seeing that the webinar that we're about to do for N10 about doing Twitter chat, building community through Twitter chats, I think is going to be immensely interesting to the people who are already engaged in the NPCon's Twitter chat and the people who are interested in, who are at the Facebook group that grew out of that Twitter chat. So I think that webinars for others in those ripples.
Yeah, the interesting thing about those is that they are transcendent beyond just the folks who are in these inner circles.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so that they are, you know, they pack even more impact.
Well, and it helps the convening part of the mission, which is bringing more people into a higher awareness of what's possible and how their work can create what's possible.
Right.
So yeah, I think yeah, I mean that's really the fun part about that. We have, in the area of people who've contacted us for classes, we've talked about the possibility of doing immersion online.
Yeah, I'm most excited about them.
And we've talked about doing it in communities.
Yeah.
No, tell me, go ahead.
No, I mean, the online presents some really interesting possibilities because we've had almost historically a lot of interest and support from folks in Canada. Okay, that's some distance, but we've also had interest and support from people in Australia, New Zealand, and places where an immersion class becomes much more difficult.
I can't tell you how many people I talk to in New Jersey who say I can't leave my kids for 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, for 5 days, for 6 days.
Right.
And for whom the tuition is one thing, but well, it's not only the time commitment, but there's travel dollars involved.
Right.
So if you take the travel dollars off of what they need to raise to attend the classes, I think it's huge, and I think it's also, you know, can you do it in communities?
Mm-hmm.
How do we activate our existing resources, our grads, our board, and all of these other ripples to bring the immersion class to communities?
Yeah.
Because that's where you want it. I mean, that's really where you want it. That, you know, you
No,
want to learn how to change the world, you have to come to Tucson, Arizona, because that's where I am.
No. And ideally, even over the online class. I mean, ideally, you want it so that, I mean, the maximum impact of immersion happens in proximity to each other, and especially in a community where you're trying to develop a cohort.
Yeah. Okay. Especially with our grads and board, building cohorts in community. So learning communities in their community. You know, everybody's involved in an ED network or in a whatever network. Starting to engage that conversation, the stuff that Sydney's been so excited about, of how do you bring the conversation into real communities.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's always been a question to me when you're, I don't know if question is really the right word, but it's been an area of exploration when you have these groups that are ED groups or the equivalents. How do you make that a really meaningful process that goes beyond the important social component that's part of it, that's really very useful for them, both in terms of building this community and a network of support, and serving almost a higher purpose than just the Rotary Club kind of.
Well, and the networking is at the base, because you're bringing people together anyway. Right. So right. The Rotary or the ED network, you're bringing people together anyway. So that's the assumption, and that's another asset. Okay, so you're bringing people together anyway. That's an asset in their communities that already exists, and if you're asking the higher purpose questions and you're convening around those higher purpose questions, yeah. Okay. syllabi in terms of not so much developing classes, but there are already people in our midst who are teaching at the university level.
Right.
You know, Angie's been a guest at our board meetings. Eric Mills is teaching. I mean, so many people who are already familiar with what we're doing are teaching. There's something there. There's something fabulously subversive there in terms of the kinds of syllabi that we created at Duquesne that model what you're teaching in the way you teach it, engaging the class, engaging the participants in the. Okay, so. And you know, build that with the people who are already in the circles.
Right.
Okay. One page. I keep multiplying. So I came up with the 3 best things that man ever invented, and duct tape is not on the list.
Oh, darn.
Yeah. It is definitely Post-its, without a doubt, Post-its. It is WD-40, and it's a hot glue gun. And if you have those 3 things.
I don't know. I mean, if you really want the spaceship to hold together, you are going to need duct tape.
You have a hot glue gun.
No, I'm not saying that.
And you have Post-its. It'll stick when you want, and it won't stick when you don't want.
I love the fact that duct tape has become so ubiquitous that it's now in craft stores in colored plaid, paisley. So the wallet that my son Derek made out of duct tape would be much more fashionable now than it was when he made it in the first place, which was purely out of duct tape.
I'm really glad you told me it was your son, because if you said Derek, I never would have known who you were talking about.
Well, I have to keep in mind that this is internal and a little bit external.
Derek, my son. Diane, my wife.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Tom, my builder.
Tom, my builder. Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Educate, demonstrate, lead. No people have, no people are. Another thing that we've already been talking about is, and this is going to be tremendous, for anything else that we do, we need to free up our time, and there needs to be more of us. This can't be the Hilda and Dimitri show. And the faculty level. Developing faculty of people who can teach all of these things in here. So I think that you know, we've obviously got our grads there, and just, you know, the whole this multiplies. This is where the starfish comes in. In the world of the starfish and the spider, this is that distributed leadership piece. You can go get another little marker, because I think this one's about to die. You know, all of the questions that Gail is already jumping in to sort of lead the charge on developing this faculty level.
Mm-hmm.
What are the qualifications going to be at the various levels? So qualifying to teach webinars is going to be very different than qualifying to teach the immersion class, but somebody's got to teach the immersion class other than me.
I'm really wondering, and this is kind of interesting, with all of the online education stuff that's going on right now, with the Khan Academy, and there's iTunes University, and there's a variety of them, that part of what the faculty level could do is maybe create curriculum that can begin, and I realize it itself is not first ripple, but it is using the first ripple to
activate the second ripple.
To have more and more. I mean, we're doing this right now where we're live and we're recorded, but I'm also thinking of it from a purely class-based, or what a faculty would be doing basis.
So you create a body of work that is published under, they can publish it wherever they want to, but it's also published under, well, and that's what we've been starting to do with having them, so we have grads who can do videos, they can blog, that are sort of sharing their wisdom and growing the wisdom. Again, that's spreading the it's spreading different voices, different interpretations, different ways that people are using the stuff that they're learning, and again, it does the huge thing, which is take it away from this effort being the personality of you and me.
Mm-hmm.
That I've so lost my words today. Diluting of the thought that it is just you and me, and maybe it's not dilute, but it's spreading. It's oil in the water. It's spreading. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe that's a really crappy analogy. But
yeah, it's sort of dismissing the cult of personality in this. That's not what this is. That this is based on values and concepts and ideas, and not on force of personality.
Oh, I just thought of something that's making me crazy. And I don't know how I feel about it, but one of the people inside that ripple is me.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're talking about how do we get past the cult of personality, and yet if I am one of the biggest assets that this thing has,
I mean, that's the reality of it, and it would not be where it is were it not for
I keep channeling Bonnie Koenig, in our first session when we were developing this back in the immersion class, and Bonnie looked at me and said, every movement needs a charismatic leader, and whether you like it or not, you have all the traits that, I mean, this is so not what I want to be, but I think at some point we need to acknowledge that in terms of the ability, this thing has been built around the assets that I bring to it, but in terms of the ability to generate revenue, resource,
yes.
In terms of speaking gigs, in terms of I don't know what else. I mean, I don't want to be consulting. Obviously, we're not consulting. We want others to do the consulting.
Right, but we want more the maximum impact of the work being done. And consulting is not
my maximum.
It's maximum impact. Yeah. And that brings up another area that I was thinking about was other venues for dispersing of the values, the thinking, the framework. So you mentioned keynotes. Well, there's conferences in general, and there's conferences that are not, sort of the unconference type conferences. There's where people are getting together and sort of the bar camp kind of things. So having, be it you or be it grads or be it whoever, people in these sort of next wave of networking, conference, conceptual.
There we go. There we go. That if it's not just me activating my resources, but each of them activating their ability to speak. So we had that conversation on the listserv this week, where Judy was asking, where is it appropriate for bringing Hildy in versus where is it appropriate for, and everybody was sharing how they talk about the work that they're doing and talk about the Pollyanna principles, and that, you know, doing workshops is not where, that's what they're trained to do. We're training them so that they can go out and do workshops. They can do conference keynotes. You know, we're giving that to them so that they can have that as well.
Right, right.
But there are going to be circumstances where people want that next level thinking, pushing thing that, yeah, I do. And you know, Gail's chief boundary pusher thing. I acknowledge that that is my role.
Right.
That I'm the one thinking the next thought. And you know, we're all thinking next thoughts and having this wonderful group to spark off of. We all spark off of each other, but
well, how do we take advantage of your skills, which include public speaking, which include conceptualizing and synthesizing, and sort of the big picture thinking, so that more people can take advantage of it and incorporate it into what they're doing. And that activates then, if we're looking at activating gifts, and we're looking at you know, the other goals that this exercise today is meant for, that's another tool for doing it.
You're right. You're right. You're right. And it's a combination of it. You know, when we start matrixing this out and we look at what criteria do we want to look at to choose which of these to pursue, it's going to be which of them accomplish the most goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that some of these, you're right. You know, my keynoting generates revenues for creating the future, and exposes more people to the concepts. Where when our grads speak, we want them to.
Right.
It helps them. It furthers the mission,
Well,
and it activates more people.
You know, for example, the time, effort, and energy it took, and resource it took to do the TED Talk in Tucson has generated many-fold the return, many times the return of all of that time, energy, and resource that went in doing it. If that was at the TED, you know, the annual
the
TED
mothership.
Talk, if that was the annual TED, or if that was at Davos, or if that was at
So high-profile keynotes, which means that activating. Okay, this is one more. The first ripple, get me high-profile keynotes. So there's the referral kind of thing. Referral fees. The grads have talked about referral fees. And then that raises the entire question of to be referred by creating the future. What kinds of qualifications do we want to, you know? I know that there's been some pushback on having any qualifications if you've gone through the course, but there's people who've gone through the course 4 times, which is a lot different than, and putting it into practice every single day.
right.
So you know, that raises a whole question of qualifications. And I think that's something that that the board probably is going to want to talk about, is whether or not, because that's what it came down to in the discussion online, was whether or not there should be qualifications for creating the future, referring potential client, because, you know, people come to the website, they say, oh, I want your help. Referring people.
I'm wondering if you know, I'm overlaying how software and apps are recommended. And so they become either peer or user based. So
yeah, that makes me really
I'm not suggesting that that's the way to do it. What I'm suggesting is that having a degree of feedback in the process.
So right.
You know, so that it's not you know, the equivalent in an app store is I made an app and I put it in the app store. You know, which would be the equivalent. I took a class and yeah. So there needs to be more to it.
I think part of it is getting feedback from, so whatever the qualifying process is needs to include feedback from people they've actually worked with. Is that where you're going?
Yes, and their peers within here, within Creating the Future. Other folks who maybe were in class with them, other folks that they're in contact with.
I think if you're going to refer a client, if you're going to refer somebody to be a paid consultant to somebody who needs help, the fact that Joe sat next to them in class and thought they were really smart, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think we're going down a rabbit hole. I think that that there needs to be something that qualifies.
Yeah. Okay. I will.
It needs to not be us. It needs to not be, I think they're smart, because there's a lot of people that I think are brilliant.
Right.
And you know, that have been through our classes and not. And that I've learned from outsiders that are not effective. Mm-hmm. I'm always surprised to find it, because I think they're really, really brilliant. So, you know, it needs to not, again, there needs to be an objective way of knowing who. You and I are shot dead in the middle of Main Street. There needs to be a process by which that's not subjective.
Yeah, no, I that's where I was going, and whatever the criteria is.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm
TBA.
Yeah,
TBA.
And that's why I'm saying, like, I think that's a rabbit hole that could kill us. If we went down it today, that's all we talk about. Other ideas of how to activate existing folks who are in. I think one of the, well, and it comes back to that thing that we mentioned before. I think we need to be more proactive about asking people what gifts have they not been asked to share and that they would like to share.
Yeah.
I'm really, that is such a powerful question, and I think that the work that we started on last week, which seems like it was about a month ago, but last week when we met with Rachel and Gail and Kathy and Lisa, talking about volunteering and participation, I think that that's integral to this.
Mm-hmm.
Is having a spirit of participation that values the whole of what a person is, rather than saying, you know, I love Lisa's example of in all successful volunteer encounters, no volunteer ever says, I was happy because I felt used and utilized. And so the whole how do we use and utilize volunteers, it's
totally used.
It's such a great example, and so I think that what gifts do you want to share? You who are excited about the work that we're doing, what gifts do you wish any organization that you're excited about would ask you to give?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about a group that I love passionately, that I would do anything for, that and they know that, and I am in really, really close contact with them, and what they asked me to do was to sit on an advisory board. And while I'm happy to do that, that's not my highest potential. That's not the gift.
Right.
I would love them to ask me to give.
Right.
And while I'm happy to give that, I'm happy to, you know, every couple of months answer a question when they have it. That's not my highest potential gift for them. And you know, I want to not be making that mistake.
I'm just trying to think of how one goes about finding those gifts, determining what they are, encouraging to ask.
I think the whole thing of Kim, I mean, Kim's such a great example.
Right, but we didn't even know.
That's what I'm saying. We didn't ask, and imagine if we asked.
Okay, I mean, I don't know that would have been there. You know, I don't know. I don't know how to ask. I guess is what I'm looking at. How do we go about it?
I think I would bet you that if we just asked the question, it would spark a conversation that would lead us to what that question might or might not be, or those circumstances. Okay. But
I think when you have an example like Kim to use as an example, you know, here is
we asked that question in our grads listserv. We asked that question in the Facebook group, just in those two places where people are constantly engaging and asking questions. I bet you we will get a really interesting. We'll have absolutely no idea what gives people. Okay, another one. We asked several months ago members of the Facebook group if any of them were interested in moderating. And the gifts that they are showing in that are way beyond just I want to be the control freak that moderates this group.
Right.
They're being brilliant. I mean, Mark and Bob right now are sharing their brilliance in ways that I'm going to guess they don't even know they're being brilliant. And I'm also thinking about Drew and Jessica, the same thing. We put a call out to the world that said we're looking for board reporting secretaries who are passionate and want to learn.
Right.
So I think in the asking, it's just I think if we ask for what gifts they have that they want to share, it might also be the sub question might also be what would you want to know more about before you could answer that question.
I'm thinking about Catherine routine. You know, we shared great gifts with her, and she never would have even had a clue. I mean, we were so totally off her radar. I mean, completely off her radar in terms of the end result of what she ended up with. And I'm wondering.
Put the camera in.
What's that?
Put the camera in.
I'm wondering what folks are out there who may not even be in the first or second ripple here, because to her we wouldn't have been. We would have been like in the third ripple, if that. You know, so it makes me wonder.
Well, and I wonder if they another group is not in the people who have actively wanted to connect, is people at Facebook in both groups that I'm active in and in at our pages, people who actively connect with us there.
Right.
I think that's another a group of people where if you go out and you ask that question, it's people who are already paying attention, people who are already, you know, actually reading what's in their stream because you said it.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it is the Facebook page for Creating the Future, whether it is the Facebook page, my personal / professional page, whether it is in the groups that we're active in that are not our groups, but are other groups on Facebook that we're active in, asking the question.
Yeah. And whatever groups they're involved in I mean, you know, let's take it.
Well, you see, and that's where it's, let's just stay within that first ripple.
Okay.
Because look what we just generated with that first ripple. You and I don't have time in a year to do what we just generated in that first ripple. But I'm okay. So here's what I'm going to suggest that for the day, because it's 10 minutes after 4, quarter after 4, is that I think that we have generated enough ideas to even start with. That another day we can pick up from here and just matrix these out. And then the next thing that we really need to work on in the world of our assets is our mission assets. We have so much to work with.
Yeah.
That, especially the immersion course, if we were to just take the immersion course and flow chart it out.
Okay.